guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am so excited to be doing a review on this book. It is called Girl Made of Stars. This honestly is probably the most excited I've been for a YA book in a very long time. I wanted to finish it as quick as possible to get a review up for you guys because I know a ton of you were asking about my thoughts, because the synopsis is unbelievably interesting and just kind of almost makes you automatically want to pick it up to see what happens. So yeah, if you want to know my thoughts as well as a non-spoiler review and then a spoiler discussion at the end, then just keep on watching. Alright, so starting off with a brief synopsis, this basically follows a character named Mara who has a twin brother named Owen. So Owen's dating a girl named Hannah who is also one of Mara's best friends. So what happens is they go to a party one night, and then the next day Hannah claims that Owen actually raped her. And so Mara's kind of stuck in a situation where she could never imagine her brother could do something like that, but also can't imagine Hannah ever lying about something that's serious. So while she's kind of dealing with all of this, she's also dealing with girlfriend troubles, what is her name? With Charlie, and she's also struggling with her bisexuality. So there's a lot going on in this book, to say the least. But it is kind of that initial conflict that I think is drawing in the most attention. At least for me, that's what kind of really drew me in. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the best I can give synopsis-wise without kind of spoiling anything. So now we'll kind of go into the stuff that I liked and didn't like. Alright, so starting off with things that I liked, I think there was some great representation in this book, and it didn't feel forced in the sense of kind of token characters just kind of thrown in there to be like, look, they're not all white and straight. Like, Mara was bisexual and Charlie was, I believe, gender fluid. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Or I believe that she was, Charlie was lesbian, but she also was leaning towards believing that she was genderqueer. I think that was part of her. She wasn't exactly sure. She was leaning more towards it, but she was more so finding herself throughout the story. But you never actually find out what exactly happens there. That's not really a huge part of the story, but just for sake of clarity, I guess I should just note that. Also, I think that another thing that I liked about the story was there was enough conflicts that kind of balanced out the main conflict, if that makes sense. So if this had just been kind of a story just about the Hannah and Owen, then it kind of would have felt like, I don't want to say it would have felt weird with it coming from Mara, because it would have still worked as a book, but I think that Mara kind of having other stuff going on kind of helped to just kind of balance everything out and just help the story have a, a good progression, I guess you could say. More so because I think it also helped with making sure that this is a book that could be read by a lot of people in terms of age-wise. I think that somebody in like the 8th grade could read this because it's not overly explicit. It's not, it's just not very overly explicit, I guess you could say, and it handles sexual assault, it handles sexuality, and just kind of coming of age all really well, and in a very PG way that also kind of teaches you, or not teaches you, but like if I was in the 8th grade, I would have really appreciated this book because it kind of it's written in a way that young people could read it, and I think that young people could really stand to gain from reading a book like this, but also in a way that I read it and I didn't feel like I was reading a book that was written for younger people, or at least not too young. There were areas that I was like, this is okay, all right, but you kind of have to give and take, I guess, with YA. Also, another part that I really liked about it kind of goes on to that whole way that it was kind of told in a PG way, was not only was it a super unique story, but there wasn't overly graphic parts of the book for the sake of shock value. 13 Reasons Why. Take note. I'm not talking about the book, more so the show. That whole discussion on, or at least Band-Aid that they keep putting on, just showing ridiculously provocative's not the right word, graphic scenes and claiming, oh, it's for the sake of discussion. It's like, no, I'm pretty sure you're just doing that so you can get articles written about it, because the only articles that came out about 13 Reasons Why Season 2 were about that last episode, and if you hadn't had that episode, you wouldn't have had as much press, but that's none of my business. But after watching 13 Reasons Why Season 2 and kind of seeing that extreme and seeing this extreme and seeing that this book could provide, or initiate as much discussion about sexual assault that 13 Reasons Why claims that it's doing so much more of, by including those graphic scenes, just kind of shows, I just have a lot more appreciation for the way that this story was told, because I genuinely do not think that graphic content is the only way to initiate discussion, and I also don't think it's a better way to do it either. So yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but that's another thing. Another thing that I really liked about this book was I had no idea how this was going to end, because if you think about it, if Hannah is lying, then what happens at the end? And if Owen is lying, then what happens at the end? Like, what happens to Mara and her relationships with these people? It just, the more that I was reading, I was just more and more, I was like, how the hell is this story going to end? Like, this seems like there's just no way this could possibly end in just kind of a tied up in a bow way, which tends to be the way that a lot of YA authors tend to wrap up their books, which is why I kind of expected them to lean towards that. But surprisingly, this actually ended in not that necessarily a way that I didn't expect it to end, but just a way that I was very happy, and not necessarily the way that kind of everything was left, because you have all of these not unresolved conflicts, but sexual assault and convictions of sexual assault, and even just claiming that someone sexually assaulted you. You can't really wrap up that kind of situation in a book. You can't really end that chapter. I feel like that's something that everyone kind of moves on and just kind of, or not moves on, but lives on with for the rest of their lives. And I think that whichever way the story was going to end, I was expecting that somehow she'd be like, oh, like, surprise, this happened, so it's all okay. But thank God she didn't do that. I really, really like that she didn't do that. As I mentioned before, in things I didn't like, there were some cringy aspects that I was like, ugh, like, this is like so awkward, and I feel very secondhandedly embarrassed. But at the same time, it's like, you just kind of have to expect that that kind of comes with YA. She also at one point wears galaxy leggings, which I was like, okay. Thank you. I felt like I was back during like when I used to read Hush Hush, and Becca Fitzpatrick would be like, oh, she was wearing this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm just going to skip that page because I'm creating a new outfit for her in my mind, because that's gross. And before anybody says, I like galaxy leggings, that's fine. You can like galaxy leggings. I personally just don't, okay? We can all have different opinions, please. This necessarily isn't a thing that I didn't like, but I almost wish that there were more POVs in this book. I think that it could have been, I don't want to say a lot more interesting, because I obviously did say at the beginning, back when I didn't haul it, but what was it? Or no, in my TBR, I said my main draw to this book was the fact that it wasn't the victim's perspective, it wasn't the person who was accused who was telling the story, but it was rather someone that you typically don't hear the story from. And while I do appreciate that about the book, and that's what made it unique and really drew me into reading it, there were areas that I was just like, I wish I knew what was going through Owen's head, or I wish I knew what was going through Hannah's head, because you kind of would like go through the paces and you're like, okay, like, what are they thinking? Like, there's so much going on here, and you just really want to know what they're thinking. So that's something that I don't want to say I really feel like the book was missing, but if that had been added in, I would have appreciated it. All right, getting into the spoiler portion of the video. So if you want to read this book, don't watch past here. There's some massive spoilers I'm going to be talking about. So definitely exit this video, read the book, and come back. I think actually I should give my kind of brief like roundup, I guess, before I talk about spoilers. I would give this book, I want to give it like a 7.8 to an 8 out of 10. I think it was really well written. I think it's a very important book in the sense of the same way that Love, Simon was important for kind of having one of those like cheesy YA books starring, instead of a straight couple, a like gay couple. But also, and the fact that it was a gay coming of age book. I think that this book was handled very well. I like that there was no shock value. There were areas that were a little bit typical YA, but it is a YA book, so I can't really slate it for that. But I would say if you're even thinking about grabbing it, I'd pick it up. It's pretty interesting, and I don't want to say there are some predictable areas of the book that you're like, oh, I kind of saw that coming, but there are areas that you're like, oh, like, I didn't know it was going to turn that way. So yeah, I would recommend reading it. All right, guys, so in terms of the spoiler discussion of the book, I really don't know how I feel about Charlie as a character. There are areas that I was just like, oh my God, this girl is way too, like, she's pushy, she's pushing Hannah, she's pushing Mara. It's like way too much. In areas like where she wouldn't really protect her, like when I forget the girl's name, the one who kicked Mara out of her own club, and then Charlie didn't immediately run after her. Like, Mara had to message her and be like, can you come outside? Like, if you're really a friend, like, would you not want to go check on how your friend is? And I don't know, like when she would give her silent treatment at like the most inappropriate times when it's like, okay, this is more than just like a breakup. Like, what are you doing? I just don't know how I felt about her character, to be honest. I'm curious as to what you guys think and what you thought of her character, as well as like her dynamic with other people in the book. But yeah, that was like the main thing that was my only real gripe, was I was like, I don't really like Charlie. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. As always, if you did enjoy, feel free to give this a like or subscribe to my channel, and you can also keep up with me outside of YouTube by following me on Instagram or Twitter or Snapchat, which are all Casey Aonso. If you did read the book and have thoughts, let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't read it yet or have any book recommendations for me, also leave that in the comments down below. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.